If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.
Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
I'm Faye.
And I'm James. So Faye, how's your week been?
It was a nice week. It was a short week again last week, wasn't it? So I was straight in on Tuesday with a lunch that was organised by BDO and Burkitt's, both of them sponsors of 21 to Watch, and they'd organised for the winners this year to all get together for a lunch. And I got an invite because obviously it's 21 to Watch, and it was really lovely. You know, just watching the ecosystem in action, everyone just getting together, having conversations was lovely. Mark Slack was the guest speaker. So he was, CMR Surgical was the 2019 winner, the first year. He gave a really interesting talk and he's coming on the podcast. We're recording with him in August. So I'm not going to tell you what he said, but it gave me so much material for, you know, talking to Mark and digging a little bit deeper with him. So that's one to look forward to after the summer. And then, to be honest, it was, 4 days, so just lots of catch-ups, meetings, new client kickoffs. And I'm slightly traumatised that we're now in June. We're nearly 6 months through the year, which is slightly panicky. But, and I can't remember if I've told you this or not, I'm off on holiday for 2 weeks at the end of June. So I'm going to leave you to hold the fort. Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
My pleasure. And what about you? We got up to mischief this week, didn't we?
Yeah, well, Mike posted on LinkedIn, for those that have seen it, so the cat's out the bag, that we actually, the tables were turned on us, weren't they? So we were the other side of the table being interviewed for a change. I'm not sure I liked it. I think I prefer asking the questions.
Yeah, it's like, it gives us an insight into what we put our clients through. But we do send them questions in advance just to give them a bit of an idea of what we're going to hit them with. But yeah, it was fun. And I mean, to be honest, we weren't talking about our past careers or anything like that. It was literally just about running the podcast, wasn't it? It was a bit of a podcast to podcast chat. So anyone who's interested in that and a different side of us, then I'm sure you can head over when it eventually goes live.
Yeah, we'll let you know when that comes out. So thanks to Mike for asking us on to Eastern Promise. That was appreciated. I also caught up with Terry Michelle Hughes from Cyber East, a membership organisation looking at cyber to sync up on plans. Did the same with Cambridge Wireless this week as well to catch up on planning for Cambridge Tech Week. And I may or may not be at South by Southwest London by the time you listen to this, so I'm just trying to juggle a few things. I do have a ticket. I've just got to figure out if I can actually get to London or not, but I'm looking forward to that if I make it, and I will report back on what I discover.
Oh no, that's exciting. Very good, very good. So let's cover a few news bits for listeners today. So the first piece is from Cambridge-based video games company Frontier Developments, who shared some good revenue news. Its stock rose 20 pence or almost 9% to 248 pence on early trading, and revenue for FY25 is expected to be ahead of expectations at around 90 million. So it's not a massive advance in financial terms, but it is a huge morale boost after some pretty tough trading times. The company cites strong performance across its games portfolio.
Yeah, that's good news. I mean, the gaming industry's had some tough times in general, so good news for Frontier. Moving on, Ensilica, who are an Oxford-headquartered producer of ASIC, which are application-specific integrated circuits, has established a new engineering hub here at the Bradfield Centre, so welcome to them. Drawing on Cambridge's renowned semiconductor ecosystem, Ensilica has opened new engineering facilities in the city and has recruited 6 engineers, 4 of which hold PhDs, increasing the company's global workforce to 190 people. With the addition of this new facility and technical expertise, Ensilica will expand its existing MM-Wave RF integrated circuit design capabilities, an area which the company has already seen significant customer demand.
We've got some exciting news back to Cambridge Tech Week. I know you've just mentioned it. Another activity was announced last week ahead of the event in September. There is a pitch competition and it will now be part of the main stage event. It's actually going to be the only official pitch event. Previously, it's been held in the exhibition hall, so it's great to have it on the main stage. So this is a real opportunity for any tech startups with ambitions to scale to enter. There's no charge to enter and it's completely open. So whether you're from Cambridge, the east of England or beyond, you're very welcome. And it's quite interesting because there's quite a few delegations already scheduled to come over from, international destinations. So it wouldn't surprise me actually if that pitch competition has people, from a really broad mix. So anyone who's interested can head over to cambridgetechweek.co.uk, click on the link to participate, and all the details are there. But you've only got until the end of the month, until the 30th of June. So don't delay if this is of interest to you.
Great. If anyone is listening and is interested or working directly in the field of cybersecurity and resilience, there's an event this coming Friday at the Bradfield featuring a delegation of US-based cybersecurity companies, which is facilitated by Cambridge Wireless. So if anyone is interested in taking part in that event, reach out to Cambridge Wireless or contact Rachel Kerr via LinkedIn or reach out to us and we'll connect you. And actually on the subject of events, the day before that visit on Thursday the 5th of June, we have the Mindstone Cambridge AI meetup and yet another AI event on the 10th of June, which is titled Can AI and Safety Go Hand in Hand? Engineering Responsible Intelligence at Speed, which is organised by Cambridge Wireless's AI Special Interest Group. So there's a lot going on. You can sign up for all of those by visiting bradfieldcentre.com and clicking on Community and then Events.
Excellent. And to round up on events, I'm just going to throw one more in there, reminding everyone to get their programme sorted. It's Cambridge Wide Open Week next week. So they have a phenomenal couple of days of pitch events across life sciences, biotech, tech bio. They've got Cambridge Wide Open Day on the Wednesday and some other activities on the Thursday, Friday as well. We talked to Prashant Shah a month or so back in episode 137. So do listen in to that episode if you don't remember it, or follow them over on LinkedIn for all the latest info on the programme. So no doubts we'll be talking about that in one of the future episodes. Final piece of news will be one again that some of our early listeners may remember. Back in episode 45, we spoke to Raj and Kavitha from Synaptic about their EdTech platform. And last week, they were announced as the Tech Nation Regional Want to Win finalist. So they're going to be presenting next week at London Tech Week. So we wish them all the best as they pitch.
Okay, that's the end of this week's news. So let's move on to today's guest. We were thrilled to see Xampla on a Channel 4 documentary talking about their Morrow packaging. And actually, you can watch the clip of that via Xampla's LinkedIn page. And I definitely recommend you do check that out because it shows you the production process of Morrow. So it's actually really, really interesting and a great partner piece of content to this week's episode. So let's welcome today's guests, Xampla CEO Alexandra French.
So welcome, Alexandra. It's great to have you with us today.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So personally, I've known of Xampla for a number of years now. Actually, your predecessor, I remember during lockdown, was picking up his award for 21 to Watch back in 2021. And at that stage, and maybe we can come on to that, Xampla was really just known for this innovative approach to sustainable materials. It was a different shape of beast to where it is now. And we can certainly talk about that. Last year at Cambridge Tech Week, Mark came on. So we had Mark on with Ray from Bango talking about scaling up and taking those entrepreneurial startup ideas forward. And then actually a few weeks ago, I saw you presenting at the Tech Nation regional finals where you're in the category of Want to Win, which I think presents in London Tech Week. So we're keeping your fingers crossed for that. So my first question to you is, Xampla has had a really good profile and continues to. You've got to run a business, but how important is it to also keep that profile out there and get involved in things like Tech Nation?
One of the things that's really important for us is to create awareness and let people know about what we're doing. So things like Tech Nation are great for that. You mentioned awards that we've won in the past, and we've been really lucky to be successful in some other awards recently. We were featured in the Sunday Times, and it's all about creating awareness. I think this is really helpful for consumers to learn about what we're doing and know that there is an alternative to the single-use plastics out there, and we're developing them here in Cambridge. We've created materials. We call these our Morrow materials, and we talk about these as our materials of tomorrow, replacing plastic of the past. And I think getting word out there is really important so that consumers know there is another choice for them in this journey of solving the plastic pollution crisis. Very happy to spread the word in whatever way we can.
Perfect. And hence why you're here on the podcast.
Exactly.
As well.
We're going to delve deeply into the company and the product. But before we do that, why don't we get to know you a little bit better? So can you walk us through your kind of career path and your journey?
Yes, absolutely. Because I've not been with Xampla right from the start. Faye mentioned Mark a couple of minutes ago, and Mark was our CTO and co-founder. I joined the company back end of 2023. And if you'd asked me 10 years ago, do you think you'd join a startup? I probably would have said, no, I can't see that sort of being in my career journey. So it's really interesting that I'm here now, and I'm absolutely loving it, and so great that life has brought me here. So I did my studies here in Cambridge as I'm a scientist a long time ago, did my natural science degree, and then I joined Johnson Matthey. They're a FTSE specialty chemicals company, big global company, but actually headquartered not too far from here in Cambridge, just down the road in Royston. I spent 25 years with them. I did quite early on move from a technical role into more commercial facing roles, and I worked across a whole number of different businesses there, ranging from automotive, precious metals businesses, leading global commercial teams, sales and marketing. And then my last role with them was running their lithium iron phosphate battery materials business. I went and lived out in Canada for a couple of years, which was a really interesting experience. And it was really that role in Johnson Matthey that got me thinking about actually smaller businesses and what I wanted to do going forward. Because it was about 50 people, actually not too dissimilar from where we are with Xampla now. And we had a lot of autonomy, really operated very independently. And I loved that environment. I loved being able to shape and build a great team, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later with the Xampla team. And that, I would say, is the catalyst to then me thinking, hang on, maybe I want to leave big corporate and get into the world of smaller startup. And yeah, that was one of the sort of key defining moments.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because everyone takes their own path, and so often the startup founders we speak to are coming out of the university, or they're entrepreneurs their entire career. So I guess a two-part question. What do you feel your experiences working in more established corporate environments have brought to a scale-up? And I guess you represent an alternative way of finding CEOs for scale-up businesses, and maybe that kind of preconceived thought that there isn't that entrepreneurship spark inside large organisations is wrong.
Taking you at the first part of your question in terms of what I feel I can bring, I think having worked in a big organisation, you've got that experience of what good looks like, best in class, the way things are done in big companies. Now, a lot of that might be overkill or too much for what you need at startup, and certainly in early days. So I think it's thinking about what is helpful, what do you need to bring in, what's going to really help grow the business. And one of the specific things about Xampla that attracted me to the business was at the stage we were at. I wouldn't be looking to be CEO of a really early stage startup. I don't think that's my sort of skill set. I don't think that's where I'd add most value. But in terms of going to market, commercialising, growing the team, that side of things, I think that's where I can bring value and help the business see what's needed as you grow. There's some simple things like actually roles and responsibilities start to need to be a bit more defined. When there's only 3, 4, 5 of you, everybody does a bit of everything. But actually, when you are 30, 40 people, you need to have a bit more structure. But what's really important for me, and I'm very mindful of it and conscious, is that we don't lose the sort of innovation and entrepreneur and creative spark that you get in startups, which I think can be stifled as you grow. So that's very much a sort of forefront. And within our team, we've got a really nice mix, I think, of those sort of entrepreneurs and great scientific minds like Mark, who we've mentioned as CTO and co-founder, and other scientists who've been with Mark since the sort of very early days in the university and then early spin-out days, to bring that great technical expertise. And then alongside, as we've grown, we've got people from industry, from the likes of Unilever and P&G and Arm, and I've got a couple of other fellow Johnson Matthey colleagues who then bring that, what does good look like, and help the company scale. So I think we've got a really great balance. And I certainly think we encourage other startups to look external for that expertise as they're starting to grow, because I think that adds a lot of value. And then to the second part of your question, James, around the sort of creative spark and can you get what you need from CEOs sort of externally? Hopefully I'm a great example of that at Xampla. And I think what's really important is when I was looking at Xampla and is this a company I wanted to join, what really excited me was the technology. So I think being a scientist at heart, love of really clever science, deep science. So whilst I'm not the founder and I haven't been with the business right from the start, I have the sort of love for the company and the passion and the energy as if I had. And I think if you don't have that, I'm not sure that you'd have such a great fit. I think an external CEO coming in has really got to feel that passion for the mission of the company to make it work. But if you've got that, I think you've then got the advantage of bringing in those other skills alongside it.
I think those soft skills, they're absolutely vital. And I'm just thinking, James was asking his question and you were answering it, Alexandra, was you've got programs like Founders at the University of Cambridge that now have, and I think the name's right, the START program. And what they're doing is they're matching the science people with the business people. And we talk to loads of investors and they're like, they want that mix. But the reality is a lot of startups don't get that from the start, or people, personalities change. So actually, the model that you've found in Xampla, where you've been brought in partway through, actually, I think makes a lot more sense. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that. And then the second bit is, I wondered, and I did warn you that I'm quite nosy and I just like to find things out, is that recruitment process for you. Did you just decide, okay, I'm definitely up for a different kind of scale-up experience? Or were you headhunted? How did that recruitment process come about?
Should I pick up the question about the recruitment process, then remind me to come back to your other question? I was quite specific about what I was looking for. I knew I wanted something really high tech and something I felt really passionate about. So that was one of the things I was really looking for. I was really looking for a great team because the team makes it. And I'm just so lucky with the team that I work with. Really love working with them. Such a lot of talent. And then it was also the sort of stage of the business. So finding a business that was the right stage for me. And then something else that was really important for me was actually chairman and who was going to be my boss and supporting me, because it often can be quite lonely as a CEO. You often find yourself a little bit like, there you've got your leadership team and it's great, but there are those odd times where, making sure you've got a really great chair. And our chair, Pete Hutton, is absolutely fantastic. He's one of the reasons that I joined, and also what the board composition was like and how supportive was the board and how well functioning the board. And that's something I actually did a lot of homework on myself. And again, we've got Amadeus Capital, who are based here in Cambridge, as one of our investors. Horizon Ventures and others, Cambridge Angels, Cambridge Enterprise. So we've had a lot of support from the Cambridge network, which is lovely. Looking at all of those things was really important to me. So I had these criteria. Actually, just prior to joining Xampla, the sort of 6 months prior, I'd actually taken some time to complete a coaching accreditation. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I bring quite a lot of coaching into my work. So I was doing that, and I'd got my coaching accreditation. I was doing some coaching work and got to the point I'm ready to look for my next role. And it was quite weird because almost like the day I started looking, Xampla had gone out there and started looking, and our paths just crossed. I met with Pete, and then over the sort of like next few months, we had a lot of exchanges. I met with board, I met with a lot of the team. So it was almost meant to be, and Xampla had gone out on this sort of global, worldwide search for a CEO, and I lived just down the road, 30 minutes away. So it felt it was meant to be, and it really aligned very nicely.
A nice typical serendipitous moment.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think it's about looking at where your business is at and really thinking, making sure as part of your strategy, you're constantly looking at what do you need, what are you ready for, what types of resources? And are you actively, as part of your sort of HR strategy, are those skills and expertise that you can develop in-house? Because I'm a massive fan of growing and developing people, and maybe that sort of training and developing some of your existing employees. But sometimes knowing that actually you do need to go externally for it to find the right expertise. So I think looking at both of those things and making sure you're regularly looking at them as part of your strategy so that you're always in the right place as the business is growing. As we know in the startup world, things change a lot, and what you thought you needed 6 months ago isn't what you quite need in 6 months' time. So don't be afraid to change as well and adapt to what's happening in the business.
Yeah, that agility is so important, isn't it? So I think we're going to come on and talk about the detail of Xampla in a moment, but actually let's just close this section off because, as you've said, you've joined Xampla more at the scale-up stage. So some of those stages have already gone past. What do you think are the key challenges, opportunities that you've entered the business with? So you've talked a lot about team and roles and responsibilities. Could you tell us a little bit more about what were those first things that you saw when you arrived in the business and what you've been doing for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I've already mentioned the team, mentioned the game in terms of one of the opportunities, just that sort of diversity of the team, the sort of mix of skills, but also just the passion they all have. They're all super high performing. They want to deliver their absolute best, which is just a lovely environment to be in. And I'm really passionate about supporting that and supporting their sort of growth and development. And we spend a lot of time as a leadership team making sure we do that a lot. I think in terms of other opportunities, the technology itself and the potential it has and is already having now, because we just launched in market, to eliminate single-use plastics is really groundbreaking. So it was being able to demonstrate real product market fit so that we've gone from, hey, look, this is a great idea in a lab and we're getting great results. So we're talking about our sort of barrier coatings onto paper and board, and these are applications like food service takeaway boxes, your takeaway coffee cups that are just used in everyday lives, the sorts of performance that they need, so grease barrier, water barrier. We can get great results in the lab, but actually working with partners and being able to see that working in the real world and having that sort of true product market fit demonstrated, sort of great opportunity. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about launch and things, but that was a real sort of like milestone opportunity. And I think one of the other things is around, we saw a real opportunity to be able to scale efficiently, scale quickly. It's something we get asked a lot about partners we're working with. Often there's a sort of reticence or a bit sort of nervousness with a startup. It's like, yeah, you've got a great idea. If you can only give me a few kilos of coating, well, that's no good when I need thousands of tons of this material in the long term. So being able to demonstrate that we can scale really effectively is really important. And that was one of the other sort of opportunities I saw. So we can really get this out there in the market, making a really big difference. I think in terms of challenges, one of the biggest challenges we have is around greenwashing, confusion for brands, consumers, people like us here. There's so much incorrect messaging, mixed messaging, greenwashing out there. It can be really hard to know, what choice you're making. There'll be things that claim to be plastic free, claim to be compostable, which just frankly aren't, and it makes it really difficult for consumers to know their every intention of making the right choice. This greenwashing makes it really difficult. And it's one of the reasons we launched our Morrow brand. Company name is Xampla, but our Morrow brand is our brand that's all around eliminating plastic. And I think I mentioned at the start in terms of sort of material of tomorrow. And this brand, we want it to sit alongside the N Brands logos, and that's how it's launched with our first launch partner, Just Eat, sitting alongside their Just Eat logo. So that when consumers see this, they know they've made a great choice for the planet. It's really easy for them to see that they've made that great choice in amongst all of this confusion.
That's a great place to talk a little bit more deeply about the product and Morrow and the science behind it. You said in your introduction you're very passionate about the product and the science. You started to touch on some of the use cases of the technology, but why don't we just run through the product itself, how it's created, some of its benefits versus other sustainable options, and some of those use cases?
Yeah. So maybe I'll sort of start right at the beginning a little bit and give listeners a little bit of the history. So this is really Mark's story, our CTO. He was postdocing here at the University of Cambridge. And he was looking alongside Professor Thomas Knowles, who's a really renowned professor here at the University in Cambridge, looking at spiders and how spiders make their silk. And silk is just such an incredible material. And by weight, it's 5 times stronger than steel. It doesn't dissolve in the rain when it gets battered by a rainstorm. And it's just quite a fantastic material. So Mark was looking at how those sort of protein molecules within spiders' silk were arranged to give these fantastic properties. And he was then using silkworms to look at silk. And he's told me that it is not fun in any shape or form to be using silkworms and trying to extract this silk. So they then started looking at the learning they'd got from that and applying it to plant proteins, and how plant proteins, they have a natural ability to self-assemble. And essentially that's what we're doing in our technology, which got a lot of patents around our technology, in terms of unfolding and then refolding those plant protein molecules, but not using any chemical modification whatsoever. That's really important in the process, because it means because we're not using any chemical modification, the material is truly plastic free, fully biodegradable in whatever environment it finds itself in, exempt from the Single-Use Plastics Directive. But we've done that unfolding and refolding in a really clever way so that we get really great functional properties in terms of strength and flexibility, barrier properties, grease barrier, water barrier. So that's a little bit how the technology came about here at the university. And that plant protein material can be used to eliminate plastic in a whole range of applications. We've got our coatings, and these are coatings onto paper and board to replace the existing plastic coatings where you need the grease barrier, the water barrier, in a whole range of packaging applications. We've launched in food service, but there's fresh foods, frozen foods, baked goods, pet food, all sorts of packaging that needs barrier performance and currently uses plastic coatings. So that's a huge area, and actually what we're most focused on right now. But there's other applications, things like films. So we've developed our film to be a replacement for polyvinyl alcohol. And this polyvinyl alcohol plastic is currently used for things like wrapping dishwasher tablets, for laundry pods, where the film is designed to be soluble so that when it goes in your dishwasher, washing machine, it then dissolves and releases the detergent. So we've got a completely plant material, completely plastic free to replace in that sort of application. And because it's just made from plants, we can also make edible films. And we've done some work with Gusto, who are a home meal delivery company in the UK. And they trialled and used our film to wrap the stock cubes. You can literally drop the stock cube, wrapping and all, into your food. And that's essentially eliminating the packaging altogether, because the packaging is good enough to eat. And then the third area in terms of plastic elimination that we're working on is around microencapsulation. So these are really hidden plastics. I mean, a lot of the time people aren't aware that takeaway boxes and cups are lined with plastic, but I think there's even less awareness around things like the fragrance in laundry detergents, fabric conditioners, and a lot of other personal home care products. That fragrance is all encapsulated in plastic, really small microplastics. And these fragrances, they're designed to hang on your clothes all day long. You get nice rub and release, but it means we're all shedding microplastics day in, day out. When you wash your clothes, they're getting washed into water streams. So this is an example of really hidden plastics that we can replace. And again, because it's just made from plants, we can also go beyond plastic replacement. And we've done a lot of work with a company in the UK called Britvic to encapsulate nutrients, vitamins, work with them on things like vitamin D. So you can fortify food and beverages with vitamins. And our plant protein encapsulation technology gives those vitamins the stability in the product and also actually stability in the body. So it protects the vitamins when they're in the stomach and they get enterically released when they reach the intestine, which is where you want them to be and you get the most benefit from them. So a whole range of applications. And beyond that, because we're a materials innovation company, we've got so many other ideas and adhesives and emulsifiers and additives into things where our technology can go beyond what we're doing right now still.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A couple of follow-up questions, if you don't mind, to give the audience a sense of the size of the market opportunity. What does that market look like? And today, what percentage of that market is fully plastic-free?
On the coatings, for example, and talking more about that, because I say that's what we're actually launched with, every year there are over 4 million tonnes of plastic coating applied onto paper and board to give barrier performance. So that's a huge amount, 4 million tonnes. That's globally, but a lot of that is food and beverage. There's some personal home care packaging, but a lot of it is food and beverage and things like pet food packaging as well. And our Moro materials, Moro coating, can replace that plastic in a whole range of those applications. There's, I think, in terms of what's out there right now in terms of plastic free, it's only just getting launched into the market. So yeah, a minuscule amount of that. There's so much potential and so much opportunity to replace those 4 million tonnes and make a real huge impact on the world. Because those barrier coatings, they're sort of single use, really hard to recycle. So most of these plastics are ending up either in landfill or in incineration. So it's not like these are materials which are effectively being recycled. So that sort of biodegradation properties of our natural plant protein materials is really important. Yeah.
And I guess a question around the cost of switching in terms of producers' tooling and cost of materials, but then also would this mean like a slight increase in cost to the end consumer to move to these new materials?
So scaling, and I mentioned right at the beginning in terms of one of the opportunities I saw for what Xampla was doing was all around scaling. It's super important. It's a really great question, James, because it is so important. What's going to really drive getting to the price that's needed in the market to be able to replace at scale is all around scale. And it's one of the things I was so impressed actually with Mark and Xampla in general, that as a business, Xampla had really thought about this quite early on. And even Johnson Matthey in a big corporate, I didn't see such early thinking in terms of we need to be able to make sure that this can scale. So we've looked at that in a few different ways. You talked about, are people going to need new equipment? We don't want the packaging manufacturers to have to invest in new equipment because that just immediately becomes a barrier. So we've designed our coating to completely drop into the existing industry equipment in infrastructure. So those are the machines that are applying the coating onto the paper and board. It is completely drop in. It is as simple as taking out your trough container of your liquid plastic coating and putting in a container of Moro coating instead. And we've had that validated and proven in market with some of our partners. So Huhtamaki are a global paper packaging company. They're a big supplier into food services, for food service where we've launched, and they're our launch partner alongside Just Eat. And they've coated kilometres and kilometres of paper now, demonstrating that sort of drop-in nature. So that's really, really great validation of that. That drop-in side is really important. The choice of actually raw material in the feedstock we're using is also really important for scale and hence then cost. So we use plant proteins, and we can use a whole different variety of plant proteins. They're very abundant, they're very versatile, and we're not tied to one specific plant for our technology, and that's really important. What it enables us to do is use proteins from waste feedstocks. So one example of that is, say, rapeseed protein. Rapeseed is grown for the oil. Once the oil is extracted, that meal is actually very protein rich. There are almost 40 million tonnes of it generated each year after the oil extraction, and it's typically just dumped, used in animal feed. It's not fit for human consumption. So that's a great example of the sort of type of feedstock, but we can use pea protein, potato protein, sunflower, cottonseed, borage. We've done nice work with Elemis in a project using borage protein. So a whole range of feedstock. So that's a sort of really important angle. And then the other thing is around how we can scale quickly, how we can make sure that Moro Coating and the packaging companies can get hold of it at ton scale. So we've adopted a licensing business model. So we license our technology to people who already have the experience in manufacturing coatings. This is something, going back to my days at Johnson Matthey, I think it's often underestimated how hard it is to go from, say, lab scale, maybe even pilot plant scale, to full production scale, and the resource that's needed, but also the investment that's needed. So we're not having to go out and raise tens, hundreds of millions to build factories all around the world to manufacture Morrow coating. There are chemical companies already manufacturing coating. They have a lot of the equipment that's already needed because we've really made sure that we've designed the process so there's no bespoke equipment needed for the process. They have the supply chain and the customer base sort of set up because they're already supplying into the paper packaging industry just with plastic coatings. They're actively looking for green coatings, plastic-free coatings for their portfolio. So it's a great fit to have this licensing business model. And we've got a great partner here in the UK with 2M Group of companies. So they're our first licensed partner. They're already manufacturing at ton scale. They're in the process of building and commissioning a even bigger facility right now to grow that further to enable us to jointly tackle that 4 million tonnes of plastic coating I was talking about, tapping into that market at a big scale. So that's really important side of things as well.
There's so many things that I'd like to ask other questions on there. I think the thing that's come out for me with that is the drop-in, the fact it's drop-in. So you're not wanting to change supply chains or other processes that are going to have a massive knock-on effect and therefore delay adoption. And it reminds me a little bit of Huhtamaki, they're also based in Cambridge. They've been on the podcast and they are doing, it's alternative fuel. It's a completely different market, but that's the same premise, which is quite different. You don't have to shake up a whole model, a whole supply chain to actually make a huge difference. That's my first observation. And the second one, and I was thinking when you were talking about all the different use cases, I remember at the Technation event, one of the judges asked you a question and you really focused on single-use plastic bottles. But actually it's not, it's almost way bigger than that, because if you think about all those different scenarios that you can actually go and make a difference in, it's just huge. It's phenomenal, isn't it? So you can't possibly deliver at scale if you're not doing something like a licensing model.
It's certainly really hard if you aren't, because you've got to go out and raise an awful lot of capital to build the plants, and that's not cheap to build chemical plants, and you need more than one of them. So there's that sort of raising capital. But then also, we don't have manufacturing experts in the business in Xampla, and actually we have got process engineer experts, and we've got experts who've really made the process really efficient to be able to transfer to our manufacturing partners. But actually what we're doing is we're tapping into the expertise that already exists in the industry. Because with manufacturing comes a whole host of things. It's not just making the product, so the sort of operation side, but the logistics and procurement and health and safety and all of these other areas. And that's an awful lot of expertise to bring in, and as well as keeping the business focused on growth and the commercial side. So I think being able to use that existing knowledge in the industry is really important. And it's also really sustainable, because these companies making plastic coatings know that the demand for plastic coatings is going down. The demand for plastic-free alternatives like Morrow coating is going up. If we just built more and more factories around the world for our coating, their factories would be empty, ours would be full, and it just doesn't make sense. So it's a real win-win model. Yeah. It's not hard. It's not easy. Licensing is quite a hard model, because your first license partner is always looking for a reference. And frankly, 2M Group of companies have been amazing to work with. It's a real partnership, because they went out and looked at they wanted to get into the space of sustainable coatings. They went out and looked at lots of different alternatives with different companies, decided they wanted to work with us, and had a lot of confidence in us, because at the time we started working together, the process wasn't fully nailed down. So it's been a real journey together to get to where we've got to now, ton scale, big facility being built in Milton Keynes. So it's been a really exciting journey with them. So can we just pick up on that a little bit without telling us any of your commercial details? You've got the relationship with 2M. You've talked about, excuse me. You've talked about Just Eat, Gusto, Britvic, Elemis.
How did all of those conversations start? Did they, like 2M, they were looking for something and they came to you? Were you knocking on people's doors? How did those discussions materialise, and were there any hidden challenges from those discussions?
The partnership side of things is really important, and we couldn't do this on our own. So that's something to really emphasise to people listening, and maybe other sort of startups, to really nurture and invest time in building those partnerships. We've been very proactive in going out and looking for partners who can help us get product to market. And the sort of partnership with Huhtamaki and Just Eat to get our Moro coating launched in takeaway food service boxes is a really great example. So Huhtamaki are the ones who are making the packaging, and then Just Eat is their end customer, who are essentially using that packaging to deliver meals to their customers. And it's very much been a journey with Huhtamaki, working together to demonstrate the in-use product performance, to really demonstrate the drop-in nature of the technology and show that actually this does just drop into existing manufacturing equipment, to then work with Just Eat to show that it gives the performance that they're going to need. Because consumers want plastic free, and actually there's lots of polling that consumers will actively go out and choose things that are plastic free, but they don't want to compromise on performance. So they do not want their takeaway spilling all over their lap, or if they've got in the seat of their car, leaking over their car. So performance is really important, and somebody like Huhtamaki, great reputation, big global player, to have their support for scaling, for going to market, to have their sort of reputation behind what we're doing is really helpful in the industry, because it just sort of helps take us to that next level. We're also working with another partnership with a company called Transcend Packaging here in the UK that I can talk about because that's out in the public domain. Again, really passionate about getting plastic-free solutions out in the market. Yeah, I can't emphasise enough the importance of these partnerships, and that we couldn't do it on our own. But equally, they couldn't do it without us. They have the pull from their end customers wanting more sustainable packaging that will biodegrade, and they need these solutions. So actually, we bring that to them, and they bring us the expertise of the packaging industry. So it's a real sort of partnership approach.
Some of your answer there draws on the next question, actually, because creating the science and building the product is just part of what you need to do as the organisation, right? You, as a market leader, you need to take that leadership role and educate the market to both create the B2B demand, but then also that end consumer demand you were talking about as well, and change what consumers are willing to consume. Just as a small example, a couple of years ago, we went through a similar process in the cafe in the Bradfield Centre, where we had disposable plastic. We had plastics, cutlery that was replaced with vegware because of demand. So how are you approaching the kind of market education side of things, and what does that investment look like?
So the education piece is really important. I think you've hit on a really important topic there, James, because there's not necessarily great awareness out in the market in terms of what can replace plastic. I think if you talk to a lot of consumers, and consumers will say, yes, we want a replacement to plastic, and people are aware of the problems and the sort of plastic pollution issues, and people have seen the straw being pulled out of the turtle's nose on David Attenborough. And actually some of the scary things that we often talk about, by 2025, it's predicted that there will be more plastic in our oceans than fish. So this is kind of, people are aware of the problem. It's really tangible. But I think there isn't a great awareness for natural polymers as a way of replacing plastics. They're quite new. So there's a piece that, in terms of sort of consumer awareness and getting that sort of message out there, but also quite a lot of awareness that we want to do with things like governments. And we're quite early on in our public affairs journey. It's something that we're just starting, but we see it as really important, because when legislation is really helpful to help drive change, and then we see ourselves, our role is to provide a solution that enables brands to then meet that legislation. What we're seeing at the moment is when legislation is being written, it's quite often being written against plastic. Plastic is bad. How can we legislate against plastic? But not necessarily thinking about how can we legislate for things like natural polymers, which are a great solution to replacing the plastic. And that's purely because there isn't the awareness out there. So we want to do quite a lot around that sort of education piece. And we were lucky enough, actually, about 10 days ago, Our local MP, Charlotte Kane, came to visit us, really interested in what we're doing, really had a genuine passion for plastic replacement and tackling this problem. So great to have her on board, and we look forward to doing some more work with her and actually growing what we're doing on public affairs to help that education piece. But I think in terms of who we talk to, whilst the packaging companies are the direct customers, and paper coaters and paper mills and things are the direct customers of our licensed partners, it's also really important to be talking with the end brands, because the end brands are the interface with the consumer, and it's also the end brands that will really, alongside the consumers, help create some of that pull for change and plastic replacement. And where end brands have really strong sustainability goals for replacing plastic in their packaging, that's what's really then going to drive people like Huhtamaki and other packaging companies to be able to deliver the solution to them. We want to make sure that those brands are aware of what we're doing. We're one of the solutions out there for this. So yeah, we interact at all points in the value chain, really.
Yeah, just being a bit controversial here. So you've got such scientific rigour in what you're doing at Xampla. Do you think the demand is going to come from consumers and from the manufacturers and the retail customers, if you like? Do you think there will become a bit of difficulty in terms of the commercials to make it work? Or do you think that the commercials won't become an issue because it'll all be done at scale and therefore there won't be a challenge to keep that scientific rigour and also give the end users what they're looking for?
The scientific rigour part is really important. It's something that's very close to our hearts. And so I'm really glad you brought that up, Faith. Things like plastic-free claims, we really stay true to what we do in terms of that, not doing any chemical modification to those plant proteins so that they're truly plastic-free. And we've got that scientific evidence to substantiate those claims, not just ourselves, but actually we've recently done work with the National Physics Laboratory to prove we've got that external validation that we're not doing any chemical modification. So I think we will always stand true to that, and we will always make sure we can substantiate everything we say, because frankly, not everybody who makes claims in the market can substantiate. Things like there's a green claims code the government have just brought in the UK, and there's similar things across Europe. And those sorts of things are really helpful because it will hold people to account. And the green claims code means you have to substantiate what you're saying. If you're saying it's plastic free, you absolutely need to be able to prove it's plastic free. And that's great because we have that strong scientific evidence where we know that other things that are being claimed as plastic free don't have that sort of scientific rigour. And our customers are demanding that scientific rigour. The sort of partners that we're working with, really reputable people like Huhtamaki and others, they don't want to say we've got this plastic-free Moro coating on our boxes if they can't really believe it's true. So our customers are demanding it as well, and it's great that there is that rigour. One of the things that's really missing in the industry is a global standard for plastic-free. It just doesn't exist. And this is something, a kind of longer-term sort of vision and goal of ours to work with industry bodies and governments to be able to put in a globally, internationally recognised standard, because it would make it a lot easier for consumers, for brands, for direct customers to know they really have got truly plastic free. So that's something that would be great if it existed in the future, and we'll certainly be happy to work with anyone towards that. On the point then, so does this scientific rigour then impact commercials and make it hard to scale? No, or no harder than scaling a sort of a new product and getting it to market would be. And I think because of the way we're thinking about scaling, and I think we want and need to be able to make sure that at scale, our technology can compete at the price it needs to compete to make it viable in market. Because if it can't, then it just won't fly. So it's something we talk a lot to customers about. It's really encouraging the sort of information we've got around where do we need to be in terms of sort of price point. We initially, in terms of pricing, it does come at a slightly higher price when you're launching at smaller volumes. But when we get to bigger volumes, we can see a route with our sort of technical roadmap and scaling and volume to be able to get to the prices that needs to be to make it viable to replace at large scale. And we're having conversations right now with big customers about big volumes, and hence we're already having those conversations.
It's been a fascinating conversation. And you talked about the energy, it's pouring off you. It's been really interesting to listen to. I guess the final question is, we've covered so much ground in a short space of time. The challenges of scaling the company, the product development, sales, market education, lobbying, government. Where do you start? How do you prioritise everything on your to-do list? What does the next 18 months look like?
Yeah, so prioritisation is something we have to think really hard about. It's so easy to be thinking, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we're going to, I talked about there's so many different product applications. So I do quite consciously, quite often have to say to myself, priorities. The team is so enthusiastic. We all want to do everything right now. Right now, in terms of the next 18 months, we're really focused on our coatings. I say we just recently launched in market, and so our focus is really growing that sort of market penetration for our coatings. So that's expanding beyond just the sort of food service takeaway box into sort of different product formats. There are things like salad bowls and cups and sachets and greaseproof papers. So we didn't even talk about sort of heat sealability. So actually one of the technical properties you need is it's heat sealability for a lot of these other product formats, which our product gives. Expanding in terms of product format, but sticking on the coating side of things, and also focusing on the alternative feedstocks that I talked around to make sure that we've got really great breadth of different plant proteins to deliver that breadth of product applications in the coating market. And alongside that, another priority for us is to support that sort of growth and market penetration is brand awareness. So getting really great brand awareness, both with consumers and with brands for our Moro mark, what it stands for, and how our Moro coating can replace plastic in market. So yeah, that's our sort of 18-month focus on how we're going to continue our journey with our coatings and build on the success of that first product launch with Huhtamaki and Just Eat, and really accelerate that in UK and Europe, but then also looking more globally, thinking sort of US, Asia, because there's a lot of interest in those markets as well. So how we expand over the next 18 months into global markets too.
You've got such an interesting, exciting trajectory to follow there. And you've been doing it for, 2 years? So I've got no doubts that the next 18 months will fly by for you. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to be carrying on covering news and updates from Xampla in our segments. And of course, you're very welcome to come back on at any point in time. It's been great talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much. Really enjoyed talking to you both. And yeah, we'd love to carry on the conversation in another episode when we've got more news to share. Thank you.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.